Welcome to episode 14 of L.I.F.S. It seems like a long time since we've last spoken. I guess that's probably a reflection of how busy this time of year is. So welcome, Mo. How's things over in your side of the world?
It's going good. And this also, we are recording, it's almost 10 p.m. Eastern time here. So I think it feels we are a day behind this week, but lots going on. End of January. This month, I don't know about you, Matthew, but really flew by for me. I mean, I can't believe it's going to be February tomorrow.
Well, actually, we've got a guest, and I think it already is February for him, I believe. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, February the 1st. I am on the other side of the globe, 12 hours ahead of you, Mo. It's 10 a.m. here in Bangkok, Thailand. And yeah, really looking forward to this conversation, and great work with what you're doing, guys, on this podcast. I really enjoy it. It's one of my must listens every week. So keep up the good work.
Well, Jack, thanks so much for coming on. I mean, you and I think I was on your podcast maybe about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. Big fan of what you're doing as well. But thank you so much for coming on to L.I.F.S. For the audience, I just want to walk through a quick intro, of who you are. You mentioned you are coming in live from Bangkok. Thank you for joining in your morning on February 1st. Jack Thomas is the co-founder of the Fit Guide, the only global independent rating system for premium fitness clubs and studios. He is also the host of the Fitness Business Asia podcast and the founder and CEO of Base in Bangkok, which is the winner of Asia's Gym of the Year and ClassPass's Bangkok's Best Studio. So, Jack, thank you so much for joining us on L.I.F.S. Today.
Yeah, real pleasure to be here. And you've both been guests before on Fitness Business Asia, so it's nice now to return the favor and appear on L.I.F.S. Thanks for having me.
We got a number of things to talk about. I think probably a good place to start is the event in Riyadh, which I'm getting quite excited about. Flights are booked, hotels are prepared, and I thought it'd be great to hear, I guess, your perspective, Jack, because you've done a few of these events before, haven't you?
Yeah, I think I've been to every single one of the Fit Summit events, except for the ones during lockdowns where I couldn't fly to Singapore. But I think I joined online for those ones. And it's now evolved. They've done a rebrand into Beyond Active because their scope is a lot more than fitness. So they touch wellness, sports, all different areas now of kind of fitness and wellness. So they've rebranded. They work with some great brands. The events are always top notch. They do a fantastic job of introducing people to each other. There's always great networking at them and really good content as well. There's always really good talks, always something to learn. So this will be my first time in Saudi Arabia. So much talk about that country and the region and what's going on there. Lots of brands looking to go in. So yeah, really, really excited to go to that event, which is late February, right? I believe 22nd, 23rd in Riyadh.
What are you hearing about it where you are in what's the perspective from Asia on what's happening in the Middle East, and how are business investors and operators looking at the market, or is it not a target?
It's certainly a target for the bigger brands. There's a lot of talk about brands looking to go in there. I think Dubai is the obvious entry point into the Middle East, just like Singapore is the obvious entry point into Asia. Dubai is very mature. Boutiques there are thriving, which is more my kind of space. They've got some fantastic big box locations in Dubai, just really spectacular facilities, absolutely huge, these massive warehouses. So it's so mature there, that's the obvious place to go. And a lot of brands have got in there. When we launched the Fit Guide, I spoke to a lot of club owners there that said, just because Dubai has a lot of money and there's a lot of things happening, it certainly doesn't guarantee success. A lot were struggling. Not sure I personally agreed with this, but some did complain that their particular space in the market was saturated. So just a lot happening and a lot going on, a lot of high quality operators there. Saudi Arabia is just so new, and everyone talks so much about the opportunity there. Of course, Saudi 2030, all the development that's going on around that. Interestingly, looking at my particular space, boutiques, it looks like it hasn't really quite taken off there. I heard a talk from Fahad, founder of Fitness Time, who of course has been on your podcast Matthew, as well. He did a talk at Dubai Active, and I asked him in the Q&A at the end, where are boutiques? When do you really see them taking off? And he said it's a little bit not quite ready, a little bit immature in that area, but he predicted in 5 or 6 years, he thinks things will really pick up there in the boutique space. So certainly lots of potential, lots of brands looking to get in early, lots of things being talked about. It'll be interesting to see how that develops in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm really excited to head over. I think it's going to be exactly a year uh, from the last time I was in Saudi Arabia and also Dubai. I was born in Dubai in the 80s, early 80s. And
Big
it's
different
just
now.
continued to, yes, it's just continued to transform nonstop. And when I was there last year, I mean, I think you're spot on, Jack. I mean, just seeing the incredible facilities and even down to the coaches, the equipment selection, the class programming, all of it is probably one of the best in the world. I really compare it to the brands that we work with here in the U.S. But then when you go outside of Dubai, you go to Abu Dhabi, you go to Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they do have some catching up to do. But I do think that that is the larger opportunity. A lot of Dubai's success and evolution in fitness and wellness was largely driven by the expat population, which is the majority of that emirate. But when you go and you look at the true opportunity where you could have large regional change, it has to start with the kingdom. And when you look at the KSA, I think they're the last data point that I looked at, their gym penetration or fitness penetration is about 5%. And in Dubai, it's north of 30%. So that's a gap that I think, people like Fahad and other entrepreneurs and innovators are going to be working towards progressing the population towards that. So I'm excited to see a lot of, familiar faces and go back into Riyadh.
Well, we're going to move on to the first story then, which is Planet Fitness are in the news again. They do a great job with their, I guess, the tempo of their initiatives. That's for sure. They seem to be a reason to talk about them fairly regularly. And this first story is Planet Fitness joins the retail media game. I'll give you the first part of the story here, which is in Retail Touchpoint. It says fitness center chain Planet Fitness is the latest company to jump on the media network bandwagon with the debut of its PF Media Network. I don't know too much about this, but the new network aims to connect advertisers to Planet Fitness's more than 18.7 million members. That's a lot more members than what I thought. In both clubs and across digital channels, the company currently has 2,575 locations across the US and 5 other countries. So, from what it sounds like, it's some kind of advertising um, uh, connection where it seems as though they're, whoever they're working with is providing access to Planet Fitness's members, and that's about as much as I know. But do you guys know any more about it, and why this is unique, if it is in any way?
I think Planet Fitness, the actions that they take, just because of the size and scale, they are the largest gym chain in the world by member count. They do things that other gyms just cannot do. And when you have almost 19 million members, you can also attract media and attention because you have all the eyeballs that other gyms cannot do. This is the first time a large gym of this scale has actually done an omni-channel digital presence. So this is talking about bringing media. So your people are traditionally used to media networks that might be in just on the TVs, and they might control the commercials and ads that go on here. This is taking it to the next level. This is taking you and reaching you not only in the club, but digitally and through anywhere else that Planet Fitness is present. So look, all these brands are in a race for eyeballs, in a race for impressions, and just delivering it through one channel is no longer effective, right? I mean, you just look at the drop in cable ratings and where people are really paying attention. So this is an omni-channel strategy that's going to be in club, it's going to be digital, it's going to be social. I think it's innovative for the gym space, and maybe this is where advertising is going.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting story. I had a look through it, and it seemed to me from reading up on the media that it was very advertising focused. I mean, that was the word that was mentioned most. And I couldn't really see much value for the client, really. It looked like more a press release or articles that were going out more on the business side. And it just made me think that it wasn't really offering much more for clients. Hopefully, there is a little bit more they're doing on the media side to make it a little bit more exciting. But here in Thailand, we get bombarded with adverts everywhere we go. So my condo lift recently put up an advert, which really, really bugged me after a long day at work, having to look at an advert. Or on the SkyTrain, you get bombarded by sounds and adverts as well. And I just, in the West, there's definitely less of that. Seem to sort of respect people's time and privacy a little bit more. So that was sort of my initial thought from a client perspective. Then I looked at the prices, $10 a month, and there's a 24-cent sign up fee. So, maybe the clients can't complain too much if it's only $10 a month. There is nothing like that in Asia, even though the countries are much poorer here, of course, much lower GDP. So maybe that's just something they are prepared to put up with for that kind of price. So maybe great for stakeholders, shareholders, maybe good for the business. Interesting to see how this impacts the client experience.
I'm going to move on to the next story now, which is Dallas gamified Lumen Fitness links franchise agreement for 13 new Texas clubs. I had one of our distributors in Texas actually sent this to me this week and forwarded it over to you. Looks like it's a gentleman who was previously at Gold's Gym is involved in this project, and I thought Lumen was this was some kind of device where it measured. I'm not sure whether it measured your cholesterol or something like that. But I thought this is one of these new connected
Yes, it
devices. But
is. It is.
oh, it
They
is.
actually have one called, yes, there actually is a device called Lumen. It measures your metabolic rate. It's a pretty good device by you bringing into it. Yes. So there is a Lumen
Right.
like that. You are not going crazy, Matthew.
Okay. But this is a different Lumen then. This is not connected in any
This is
way as
not
far as
connected
you're
to that
aware.
Lumen. Correct.
Okay, right. And it looked pretty interesting. It's from what I understand and the videos that I've seen, it's a wall-to-wall LED screen. So I'll put it into my own words, but it looked like it's kind of group exercise, a boutique concept, which is heavily I guess from a visual perspective, there's screens, there's motivation, there looks like there's some kind of tracking, and the visual experience is that these screens are around the wall. So it looks quite interesting. I've seen different versions of this before, and I guess from a boutique experience, I'd certainly be curious what you think, Jack, because this is really where you come from. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting concept. Maybe it's something that can go forward because from a studio design perspective, it almost seems as though you can continuously evolve, whether it's by a class or whether it's by the month. There's a lot you can do now using screens as opposed to having some fixed decor. But yeah, pretty interesting concept. So what are your thoughts, Jack?
This is an interesting story for sure, coming at it from the boutique perspective. And a lot of boutique operators get very defensive when they see something like this and very dismissive, right? And I think it's absolutely true that this kind of concept is not going to be the in-person experience. That's what I believe. But I think this could be great for beginners, maybe people that are very self-conscious from being assessed by a coach, maybe people that are budget conscious. I assume here it would be less fee than say going to Barry's or going to Soul Cycle, for example, or people looking for really high convenience. So you can train 24 hours. I would have thought you could put classes on at any time. And it looks like they also offer personal training and group class. So all of that's wonderful for those kind of people. And that's a different kind of person that's typically coming to, if we use Barry's as an example, and everything they get with that experience in that brand, or certainly Soul Cycle with the connection with the coach, the instructor, and everything else. So I actually believe that this can coexist as part of an ecosystem where people might go to this kind of studio first, and then they feel confident enough to work with a coach one-on-one or actually go to these other brands. So I see this as a good thing and as a positive thing, but I just don't believe it's going to replace boutiques. I don't think we should even be looking at it through that lens. Community and soul is not really going to come through AI. And looking at the video, it did look interesting. It did look cool. But when I heard the sort of robot AI went something like, let's go, keep going. Yeah, it feels pretty fake, right? And it's not really going to connect with you. But my final thought on this, and I sort of believe in this very strongly, and even with digital fitness, I've really thought this over the last few years. This is a wake up call for coaches to really step up and instructors to really step up, connect with clients, make sure you're talking to the clients, you're getting there early before the class, you're using client's name. Through the Fit Guide and the evaluations that we've done, we've seen that whilst there's some brands, of course, doing some incredible things, often the coach looks like they don't really want to be there. They might shoot off straight after the class and they would get marked down in our evaluation process. These kind of concepts is just a reminder that we've got to make sure that as humans, we're using that unfair advantage against computers and AI. So yeah, that's my thoughts. What about you, Mo?
Yeah, so I mean, one on the pricing, I want to touch on that point here. So Lumen is actually $209 a month for unlimited sessions, and that's not at a discount. So one of the brands that we work very closely
Interesting.
with is called Pvolve, and they've been in the news a lot, and they're growing as well. Their unlimited membership is also 209 a month, and you get an actual personal coach for that. And I think, Jack, I'm very similar to you, but I think everyone's going to be a little bit different. One, the robotic AI voice has got to go, right? That is in any AI application. It just no serious person, like it's just not motivating. There's all these issues there. But um, you know, uh, I think that the thing that they're trying to solve for is when you look at consistency in franchising, and there's a lot of debate, franchising versus corporate owned. How do you maintain a consistent level of quality, consistent experience is pretty difficult when you look at SOPs. I mean, as you know, all that's involved in having a consistent, high quality, premium experience in a franchise or corporate studio across multiple regions is very difficult. One thing Lumen does is solve for that because they've now said, I'm going to take the human element out of it and give you a digital platform. But is this something that people are going to gravitate to? I don't know. I agree. I think a lot of people still really prefer to have a great coach and a great community and someone who could really understand nuances about how you move and give you some um, recommendations. So we'll see.
If you look at there's been some interesting virtual solutions out there in clubs, and I guess it's going to be how humans interact with the digital component, because a lot of the places, and I've seen people invest a lot of money in this and ended up ripping these kind of ideas out. So I'm not necessarily dismissing it, but where I do feel it's a challenge is going into a room that there isn't any trainers, and I think if there's a way where this is almost like a hybrid where you have a trainer and then you have it supported by this digital content and motivation and things like that, I can see that being really, really cool, almost like having the equivalent of 3 trainers in there. But if there's no trainer in there, unless it's a hotel, and it looks like this group are involved, operates 200 franchise locations across the US with brands such as Marriott, Hilton hotels. I can kind of see hotels trying it, but I just feel that there needs to be this connection between purely a cold room with digital people, instructors or whatever, and some sort of human touch that's going to kind of break that barrier a little bit more.
I think, if I may jump in, I think that the best boutiques, it's not really so much about the workout, to be honest. It's about the vibe and the experience it's created. So I think something like this can give you a great workout. Maybe the AI gets so good that it can correct form just as well as a good coach. But it's going to be someone that wants that community. They want the vibe. They want the connection, the experience. They're going to go somewhere else. And that kind of goes back to my original point of it being almost a different space of the market. Overall, really interested, and I'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, we certainly one we need to keep an eye on. The next one this is one for you, Jack, in your part of the world, but a group called Strong Pilates, and Strong Pilates ramps up its global strategy with 50 studios planned for Japan. It looks like it's a Melbourne-based or Melbourne-born fitness studio chain. Strong Pilates has ramped up its move into the global market with plans to roll out 50 studios in Japan over the next 5 years. That one of the things I always notice about the Aussies is they seem to be great at franchising, and for a relatively small country, they manage to dominate the world very, very quickly, and they don't ever mess around, because a lot of great names have come from, well, Australia and New Zealand, I would say. So what do you know about these guys, and what are your thoughts about their expansion strategy then, Jack?
So many franchise brands coming out of Australia. I think the population is around 20 million. So I'm not sure what's in the water there, but something that's making people start these successful franchises. Well, some successful. So Strong Pilates, interestingly, I was actually connected with the machinery at a studio in California when I was there in 2018. It's called the ROWFORMER. It was at a studio called Hard Fit. And I actually had a friend who was really keen on bringing them to Asia before the Strong Pilates deal. And I met the founder there who created this ROWFORMER, and he talked about expanding. And Michael Ramsey, the founder, swooped in and got the license deal to create the brand in Australia, and he's sort of expanded out from there. And he recently got the rights for North America as well. So I think he now has the rights for every territory, and he's expanding very quickly. They have successful studios in Australia. If anyone's not aware of the ROWFORMER, sorry, it's a Concept 2 rower that's built into a reformer, a Pilates reformer. So the bit that you stand on that slides back and forth on a reformer, not sure what the technical term is there, you sit in that and you use it as a Concept 2 rower. And then recently,
Mm.
to add a new element, they put a bike into some of the ROWFORMERs as well, a Concept 2 bike to add a new element. They've recently launched in Singapore, and I understand that's some of their busiest studios under a brand that's called Move Repeat. It's kind of Asia's answer to Exponential, you could say. Yoga Movement is their main brand, and they brought on Strong Pilates. They're talking about expanding into other Asian territories. The UK, they've launched a few studios there, and of course, the US is coming soon. So it's interesting to see this as part of the trend towards Pilates, all the interesting brands that are springing up. But yeah, it's a great concept. I tried it in Australia, I tried it in Singapore, and I really like how the cardio element really adds something different to what's becoming quite a busy category, Pilates.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to both Michael and Mark on a couple of occasions now, and we're potentially going to be talking with Strong Pilates about an engagement. But I think one, I have a lot of respect for them. They're smart people. They're committed. They understand fitness. They understand franchising and the space. Yes, and I would agree, Jack. The ROWFORMER inventors, actually, Matthew, not too far from you in Newport. I don't think it's too far from Newport Beach, California. Really interesting piece of product. And I think, look, Pilates has been one of the fastest growing brands in the US and also internationally. And this is bringing Pilates with a twist. It's adding a strong cardio element to it. So it's a very unique offering. I don't think that there's one like it. And Jack, I think you're right. I do think that the last time I spoke with them, they have the exclusive distributor license for the ROWFORMER product as well. So I think that they're going to do well. They're definitely going to be around. But we have seen Pilates grow. I mean, we F45 opened up a Pilates concept in New York. Jack, you're talking about that they're under a different brand in Australia as well. So um, do you want to speak a bit about that?
Yeah, they acquired a brand called Vive Active. And when we visited Sydney, Vive Active and I think Double Bay Sydney was the only club experience that scored 5 stars under our process. So we had a really great conversation with them. F45 acquired them, and then it appears didn't really do much with that brand, didn't really expand it. But now they've kind of shifted their focus back to expansion for Vive. But I believe there was a conflict in the name, like it was trademarked already, I believe, Vive or Vive Active. So they've rebranded. I believe it's pronounced Vora, Vaura
I
Pilates,
think that's
and
right.
they've
Yeah.
launched in Upper East Side, New York. So it'll be interesting to see how that does. We mentioned before before we hit record that it could be sort of a competitor to Strong. I actually see it as more of a competitor to Solid Core. They have kind of the nightclub lights, the dim lighting, more of that kind of vibe. So yeah, Pilates is hot right now, and it will be interesting to see how they do in the States. Another Australian brand going there.
Yeah, and Solid Core is actually based about a mile from me here in Arlington, Virginia. But they've done really, really well, but stayed out of franchising. All their studios right now are corporate owned. Excellent. Looking forward to that. Moving on into something that's been in the news, and I've personally been involved in, has been WaterRower acquiring CITYROW, and this is a transaction that just occurred. It feels like weeks ago, but I think it was only this week or last week. But Jack, I will hand it off to you. What have you been hearing about it, and what's your kind of take on this news?
This was an interesting one for me again because during that trip in 2018, me and my partner, we did East Coast and West Coast, and we spent some time in New York. So we went to a CITYROW location there. We had a good class. This was, of course, before closures and everything else. And so it was interesting kind of do a bit of research and see what's happened since then. So now there's only 2 franchise locations remaining. So it looks very much like their focus shifted massively towards online. I saw they received 12 million in funding, $12 million in 2021. They saw a period of massive growth. So now they've been acquired, of course, by WaterRower. And I think it's just, yeah, another sign of the times, really. There's been this drop, this lull in digital fitness and at-home fitness. We've seen Peloton, of course, losing a lot of its value. We've seen Climber being acquired by Form as well. And I also saw that Hydro have also were interested in maybe getting involved in maybe acquiring CITYROW. That was also reported. So for me, it just looks, yeah, another sign of this time when companies are looking to acquire, maybe get a stronghold on their particular space, make strategic acquisitions. So yeah, it was cool to see kind of what's happened to that brand. So much has changed in the last sort of 5 or 6 years since I've been. And it did get me reflecting as well on, not really many studio brands have been successful doing in-person fitness and having a lot of locations, and then also having a really successful digital platform.
Mm.
I mean, Barry's had a stab at it. Of course, SoulCycle tried. I'm not quite sure where the digital platform is with SoulCycle at the moment. Is that something they're still doing, Mo?
Yeah, they still have the platform. They still have the bike with the screen as well. They are still doing that. But just for full disclosure here, I actually am an investor in CityRow. I was an advisor on the transaction as well, and now we are integrating them with WaterRower. So I'm very intimately aware, and I think all parties in here um, made out that this truly is, I believe, a win-win for both WaterRower, who now has a digital tech platform. Look, I mean, Jack, to your point, a lot of these manufacturers have predominantly been going through distribution. I mean, Matthew, that's something you could opine on as well, because when you sell through a distributor, which I think is the most effective way and effective channel to move product through, you don't have that direct relationship with your consumer, because you might sell to a distributor who then sells to a gym, who then goes to the consumer. What this allows WaterRower to do is to start to build a relationship now directly with the consumer. They're going to have a content play, they're going to have an acquisition play, and hopefully it's going to help improve the product and service. And it's going to open up a few more, I think, channels for them in the years to come. I don't want to talk too much, but I think you're going to see some interesting things coming out of WaterRower in the coming weeks.
Were they manufacturing the bike for the high
For, for City Row.
City Road before? I know they were working with some rowing machine company.
Yeah, yeah. So WaterRower was manufacturing the rower for CityRow, and then we actually designed the console and the app and the technology that then connected to the WaterRower. And yes, earlier in the fall, Hybrid did show keen interest in the acquisition as well. Obviously, they were interested in it for different reasons than what WaterRower was interested in it for. But Matthew, I mean, being a business owner and kind of working with distributors, what is your take? I know you've kind of dabbled in connected fitness as well, but what is your take on that relationship with the consumer?
Well, it's if you're making things like rowers, and they're selling consumer and commercial. I see them in both. And the challenge with the product is it's a great product. It lasts for a long time. You very rarely see them trading them out. Same for a concept. And the challenge with that is like where do you get your growth? And for a hard goods manufacturer to have some form of reoccurring revenue opportunities, it's a very smart move for WaterRower, and I can see a lot more hard goods companies having to do that. Now, the challenge is, it's a very in the consumer market, it's a very crowded space. So it's the cost to bring in customers is quite expensive. But again, WaterRower are probably already doing that. So now they've got the ability to tag on some great added value to their regular product. And same thing for the commercial space. If how they're going to apply that to the commercial space. I think the only challenge I would see is that a lot of operators and fitness center owners have this subscription fatigue, and that they have so many different subscriptions now. It's a pretty expensive thing to continue. So I could certainly see it being a challenge if it's going to be like a monthly fee to get that in a club. But in general, I think it's a smart move. It's just how you package it for the different audiences would be my thoughts on it.
And this also speaks to, look, I mean, we're recording this on the 31st of January. Peloton is releasing its earnings report tomorrow on the 1st of February. But it speaks to the challenges that connected fitness has had. both in acquiring customers, the cost of that acquisition going up, keeping up with the Joneses in terms of building new technology, building features, enabling technologies like AI has gotten very expensive. And unless you're flush with cash and you have a very large scale, I think for brands like CITYROW, Jack, you mentioned Climber, and potentially others, this is going to be the first of many transactions I believe that you will see in 2024. And I think this consolidation, leveraging economies of scale, is a theme that we will see throughout the rest of this year.
Adidas Training and Bumble unite to disarm gym intimidation by helping their community to discover their ultimate gym buddy. Without knowing anything about Bumble, and I guess I should, but it certainly visually, it seems to be tapping into a different audience, and it's one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with a lot of our clients. And I think pre-pandemic, there's been people that feel very comfortable going into a gym. I use the story of the dumbbell rack and people using dumbbells. Previously, they would, you'd have a bunch of mirrors, you'd have your dumbbells, and then you would have your benches in front of it, and people would be happy to do that. I think now there's a big percentage of the population that are coming into gyms, and they're pretty freaked out about going into one of those spaces. And so, where do they go? Gym intimidation seems to come up a lot in many companies are looking to tackle it, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting that Adidas have jumped onto it, and I think there's a lot more that needs to be done and thought through around gyms and these new a new potential consumer group coming in. But how do we figure out gyms and design gyms and that kind of thing to deal with these changes? What do you tell me about Bumble, Mo?
Yeah, well, I don't know why this came directly to me. So Bumble started as a dating app. Now, Matthew, I don't know if you knew this or not,
Okay.
but I actually met my wife on Match.com. I believe it was maybe 9 years ago at this point. And that was my only actually successful date on an online app. So Bumble is a dating app, and it came out, I believe, after it was one of the later apps to come out. And the unique thing about Bumble is that women have to make the first move, and that was the whole thing. So someone have to reach out to you, and then you can connect back with them. But then over the last couple of years, they expanded out of dating and they went into career opportunities, just finding friends, and now coming into gyms. I think this is fantastic because we live in this virtual world, and I could, and I speak to like a lot of young men, either at the company, people that I meet when I'm out in the field. I think for young men, it has become a very difficult place to meet your mate or to start dating. With people working from home, and I mean, a lot of people would meet their mate or just dating either in college, at the gym, or in the office. Well, the office is gone, right? And you're typically out of school now. So one of the few places to meet someone is the gym, but it's also very intimidating. So I think from just even making friends, it doesn't have to be, just for dating. This helps bring down that wall, and I think it brings down the intimidation factor. The other thing it does is it brings up accountability. I mean, just imagine how much more accountable we all are if we have to show up at the gym. It's part of the reason why personal training works so well. So I think this is a great move. I'm really excited about this. I know gyms have been talking about adding dating. Equinox tried it, Spartan tried it, but I think this is really appropriate.
Jack, what's the Thai equivalent to Bumble, or has that not made it out there yet?
Well, I've been in a committed relationship for 8 years now, so I'm happy that I don't have any of these apps on my phone at all. I don't have to worry about any of this. And I did it old school. We actually met in person at the gym, funnily enough.
Okay.
So with something like this, I guess if someone gets caught with Bumble on their phone, they now have an excuse that they're just looking for a gym buddy. It's, I think, good that it can help people meet other people that go to gyms. There's all sorts of research about how people are much more likely to stick to a program. I think we've kind of all been through that. I certainly have in periods of my life where when I'm training with someone, like you said, Mo, you don't want to let them down. You have to go. It doesn't even enter your mind to not go because you know the other person is going. So look, I think from a getting more people into gyms, getting more people into fitness, it's fantastic. It'll be interesting to see how successful it is. Not quite sure whether it's just to find a gym buddy or if it's a gym buddy and then also perhaps a romantic match as well. And then I guess it's good for Adidas and Bumble as well. For Bumble, I think it kind of positions them as a brand away from being a hookup app. It's more than that. And I understand that's kind of one of Bumble's things. And then for Adidas, it's encouraging more people to train, more people to get into the gym. So yeah, lots of positives around it, but I won't be using it.
Well, that's it. We're out of time. Mo, any closing thoughts?
Well, I'm really looking forward to next week, Matthew. We're going to be at the Connected Health and Fitness Summit in LA. I'll be coming out to you. It's going to be a jam-packed schedule. Looking forward to that. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to be at Beyond Active. And Jack, we will see you there.
Yep.
Yeah, Jack, thanks very much for coming on. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks in Riyadh. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's podcast. Please share it with a friend if you've enjoyed it. Leave some comments on the LinkedIn page. And thank you very much for listening.